Man finds giant python attacking lion cub. You won't believe the two lions. Response. The African sun blazed mercilessly overhead as David Martinez adjusted his telephoto lens for what he hoped would be the defining shot of his 23-year career as a wildlife photographer. The Serengeti stretched endlessly before him, a tapestry of golden grass punctuated by the occasional acacia tree. He had been tracking this particular pride of lions for 6 weeks, documenting their daily routines, their hunting patterns, their social interactions. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to witness at the remote watering hole nestled between two rocky outcroppings. The pride consisted of 4 magnificent cats: Mfalme, the dominant male with his impressive dark mane that caught the wind like a crown; Makali, a sleek lioness whose amber eyes held the wisdom of countless hunts; Django, a younger male who had recently joined their small group after being cast out from his birth pride; and little Moto, a 4-month-old cub whose playful antics had provided David with countless hours of entertainment and some of his most cherished photographs. David had named them himself, drawing from Swahili words that seemed to capture their individual personalities perfectly. Mfalme meant king, fitting for the regal male who commanded respect through his mere presence. Makali translated to fierce, though David had witnessed her gentle maternal instincts when interacting with young Moto. Django meant building or construction, representing how the young male was still building his place within the pride's hierarchy. And Moto, meaning fire, captured the cub's energetic spirit and the way his golden fur seemed to glow in the sunlight. It was late afternoon when the small pride approached the watering hole. David positioned himself behind a cluster of rocks approximately 50 meters away, his camera ready to capture the serene moment of the great cats quenching their thirst. The golden hour light painted everything in warm hues, creating the perfect photographic conditions. Mfalme lowered his massive head to drink first, as was his privilege, while Makali and Django waited patiently nearby, their ears constantly swiveling to monitor their surroundings for potential threats. Little Moto, however, had other plans. The curious cub bounded toward the water's edge with the fearless enthusiasm that only the young possess. His small paws splashed playfully in the shallow water as he attempted to catch his own reflection, completely oblivious to the dangers that might lurk beneath the surface. David smiled behind his camera, already anticipating the delightful shots he would capture of the cub's innocent play. The attack came without warning. David's breath caught in his throat as he watched through his viewfinder. A massive African rock python, easily 20 feet in length and thick as a telephone pole, emerged from the muddy shallows of the watering hole like a nightmare given form. Its diamond-patterned scales gleamed wetly in the afternoon sun as it moved with the fluid grace that made pythons such formidable predators. The serpent had been lying motionless in the shallow water, perfectly camouflaged among the reeds and mud, waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. Moto's playful splashing had attracted the python's attention, and now the massive snake struck with lightning speed. Its powerful coils wrapped around the small cub before anyone could react. Moto's joyful play growls instantly transformed into terrified squeals as the python's muscular body began to constrict around his small frame. The sound cut through David's soul like a blade, a primal cry of terror and pain that spoke to something deep within every parent's worst nightmare. "No, no, no," David whispered, his hands shaking as he continued to photograph the unfolding drama, his professional instincts warring with his human emotions. He had witnessed nature's brutal reality countless times before, had documented the harsh cycles of predator and prey across multiple continents. But there was something about this particular moment, about the innocence of the young cub, caught in such a terrible situation, that made his chest tighten with anguish. The 3 adult lions reacted immediately to Moto's distress calls. Mfalme's head snapped up from the water, his mane bristling as a thunderous roar erupted from his throat. The sound echoed across the savannah like rolling thunder, a primal declaration of fury that seemed to make the very air vibrate. Makali's maternal instincts kicked in with fierce intensity, her amber eyes blazing with protective rage as she assessed the situation with the calculating precision of an experienced hunter. Django, despite being the youngest of the adults, showed no hesitation as he bounded toward the water's edge. His muscles rippled beneath his tawny coat as he prepared to launch himself into battle, though David could see the uncertainty in his movements. How does one fight a 20-foot python without causing more harm to the cub trapped within its coils? The python, sensing the approach of the adult lions, tightened its grip on little Moto. The cub's struggles grew weaker as the serpent's powerful muscles compressed his small ribcage, making each breath a tremendous effort. David could see the python's head weaving back and forth, its black tongue flicking out to taste the air, alert to every movement of the approaching lions while maintaining its death grip on its intended prey. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the four combatants formed a tense tableau at the water's edge. The lions circled the python and cub, their movements careful and calculated, looking for an opening that wouldn't endanger Moto further. The snake's intelligent eyes tracked their every move, its body coiled defensively around the struggling cub, while its head remained raised and ready to strike at any lion that came too close. David found himself holding his breath, his finger poised over the camera's shutter button. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to help, to throw rocks or shout or do something, anything, to distract the python. But decades of wildlife photography had taught him the importance of non-interference. Nature's dramas, no matter how heartbreaking, had to play out without human intervention. His job was to document, not to participate. Yet as he watched little Moto's struggles growing weaker, David felt that resolve beginning to crack. The professional distance he had maintained throughout his career seemed suddenly artificial, a cold barrier between himself and the raw reality of life and death unfolding before his eyes. His grip on the camera tightened as he fought against the overwhelming urge to abandon his post and rush to the cub's aid. It was then that something extraordinary happened, something that would haunt David's dreams and inspire his work for the rest of his life. Mvalme and Django, without any apparent communication between them, suddenly moved with a coordination that suggested years of hunting together rather than the mere weeks they had actually spent as pridemates. The older male approached the python from its left side, while Django circled around to the right, their movements perfectly synchronized like dancers who had rehearsed their routine countless times. But it was Makali who made the first move. With the calculating intelligence that had kept her alive through countless dangerous situations, she approached the python from directly behind. Her movements were slow and deliberate, each paw placed with careful precision to avoid making any sound that might alert the serpent to her approach. David watched through his lens as she crept closer, her belly nearly touching the ground, every muscle in her body coiled and ready to spring into action. The python, focused on the two males who were making no effort to conceal their presence, failed to notice the lioness approaching from behind until it was too late. Makali struck with devastating precision, her powerful jaws clamping down on the snake's neck just behind its head. Her canine teeth, evolved over millions of years to deliver killing bites to large prey, pierced the python's scales and found the vulnerable flesh beneath. The serpent's reaction was immediate and violent. Its massive body writhed and thrashed as it tried to dislodge the lioness from her grip. But Makali held on with the tenacity of a mother protecting her young. Her jaws worked to maintain their hold as the python's coils loosened slightly around Moto, giving the cub the precious gift of breath. Seizing the moment, Mufalm rushed forward and grabbed the python's tail section in his powerful jaws. His massive head shook back and forth as he attempted to stretch the serpent's body, preventing it from maintaining its crushing grip on the cub. Django, not to be outdone, joined the battle by attacking the python's midsection, his younger but no less determined teeth finding purchase on the snake's muscular body. What followed was a battle unlike anything David had ever witnessed. The three lions worked together with an intelligence and coordination that seemed to transcend their individual instincts. They had become a single organism dedicated to one purpose: saving the life of the small cub who represented the future of their pride. The python, despite its size and strength, found itself overwhelmed by the coordinated assault. Its attention was divided among three different attackers, preventing it from focusing its considerable power on any single threat. More importantly, the combined efforts of the three lions were gradually stretching its body beyond its ability to maintain the crushing pressure on little Moto. David's camera clicked rapidly as he documented every moment of the incredible rescue. Through his viewfinder, he could see Moto beginning to move more freely within the loosened coils, the cub's natural resilience already asserting itself as breathing became easier. The young lion's golden eyes, wide with fear and confusion, darted between his three rescuers and the massive snake that still held him captive. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The python's strength was immense, and several times it seemed as though the snake might regain control of the situation. Its tail lashed out at Mfalme, nearly knocking the big male off his feet, while its head attempted to strike at Makali, despite her grip on its neck. Django bore the brunt of the serpent's desperate thrashing, receiving several painful blows from the python's muscular midsection, but he refused to release his hold. Finally, the python's strength began to wane. The combination of blood loss from multiple bite wounds and the relentless pressure from three determined lions proved too much for even this apex predator. Its coils loosened further around Moto, and the cub began to squirm free from the serpent's deadly embrace. Sensing victory, Mfalme adjusted his grip on the python's tail and gave a mighty heave, his powerful neck and shoulder muscles straining with the effort. At the same moment, Makali and Django pulled in the opposite direction, stretching the snake's body to its breaking point. The python's grip on Moto finally failed completely, and the cub tumbled free from the serpent's coils, landing in the shallow water with a splash that seemed to echo like applause across the savannah. Moto's first instinct was to flee, and the young cub scrambled up the muddy bank as fast as his shaking legs could carry him. He ran to what he clearly perceived as the safest spot in his world, directly between Mfalme's massive front paws. The big male, still maintaining his grip on the python's tail, looked down at the trembling cub with what David could only describe as paternal tenderness. The python, now free of its intended prey but still caught in the jaws of three very angry lions, made a desperate bid for escape. With a violent thrash that caught all three cats off guard, the serpent managed to break free from their grips simultaneously. It immediately began slithering toward the deeper water at the center of the watering hole, seeking the safety of its aquatic environment where its swimming ability would give it an advantage over the land-adapted lions. For a moment, David thought the three lions might pursue the fleeing snake, driven by the hunting instincts that had made them apex predators. But instead, something beautiful happened that spoke to the depth of their emotional bonds. Rather than continuing the attack, all three adults turned their attention to little Moto, who was shivering between Mfalme's paws despite the heat of the African afternoon. Makali was the first to reach the cub, her rough tongue beginning the careful process of grooming away the mud and fear scent that clung to Moto's golden fur. Her maternal instincts had taken complete control, and she examined every inch of the young cub's body, checking for injuries with the thoroughness of an experienced field medic. Her low, rumbling purr filled the air, a sound of comfort and reassurance that seemed to ease some of the tension from Moto's small frame. Django, despite his youth and recent addition to the pride, showed no hesitation in joining the comforting process. He lay down beside the cub and began to groom Moto's other side, his own purr adding to Makali's in a chorus of reassurance. The sight of the young male, who had risked his own life to save a cub that wasn't even his own blood, brought tears to David's eyes behind his camera. Mfalme, the great king of this small pride, lowered his massive head and gently nuzzled Moto with his nose. The contrast between the lion's incredible power and the gentleness of his touch was breathtaking. This was the same animal that had just engaged in mortal combat with a 20-foot python, yet now he treated the small cub with the delicacy of a mother handling a newborn. David continued photographing as the python disappeared into the deeper water, leaving only ripples to mark its passage. The great serpent would survive to hunt another day, but it had learned a valuable lesson about the power of family bonds and coordinated defense. More importantly, little Moto was safe, surrounded by 3 lions who had proven beyond any doubt that they would risk everything to protect him. As the immediate crisis passed, the full emotional weight of what he had witnessed began to settle on David's shoulders. In his more than 2 decades of wildlife photography, he had seen countless examples of nature's brutal indifference. He had documented the harsh realities of survival, the endless cycles of predator and prey that governed life in the wild. But this was different. This was something that transcended mere survival instinct and entered the realm of what could only be called love. The coordinated rescue hadn't happened by accident. The 3 lions had worked together with a level of intelligence and cooperation that spoke to deep emotional bonds and genuine care for the young cub's welfare. They had put themselves at considerable risk to save Moto, facing a predator that could have easily killed any one of them if the battle had gone differently. As David lowered his camera and wiped the tears from his eyes, he realized that he had captured something far more valuable than just another wildlife photograph. He had documented proof that the capacity for love, sacrifice, and heroism wasn't unique to humans. The 3 lions had shown him that family bonds could transcend species, that the drive to protect the innocent and vulnerable was a fundamental force of nature itself. The pride spent the next hour at the watering hole, with the adults taking turns to drink while always keeping at least 2 sets of eyes on little Moto. The cub, though clearly shaken by his ordeal, gradually regained his playful spirit under the watchful care of his protectors. He stayed close to the adults, but David could see the natural resilience of youth already beginning to assert itself. As the sun began to set, painting the African sky in shades of orange and pink, the pride finally prepared to leave the watering hole. Mfalme led the way, his majestic mane catching the last rays of sunlight like a golden crown. Makali walked beside Moto, her protective presence never wavering for a moment. Jengo brought up the rear, constantly scanning their surroundings for any signs of danger. David packed his equipment slowly, reluctant to end this day that had changed his perspective on wildlife photography forever. He had started the morning, hoping to capture beautiful images of lions at water, but he was ending it with something far more precious, a profound understanding of the emotional depth and capacity for heroism that existed in the animal kingdom. As he made his way back to his vehicle, David's mind was already racing with plans for how to share this incredible story with the world. The photographs were stunning, capturing every dramatic moment of the rescue with crystal clarity. But more important than the technical quality of the images was the story they told about love, courage, and the unbreakable bonds of family. That night, as David sat in his tent reviewing the day's photographs on his camera's LCD screen, he felt a sense of privilege that went beyond anything he had experienced in his long career. He had been granted a window into one of nature's most profound truths, that the drive to protect and save those we love transcends species boundaries and represents one of the most fundamental forces in the natural world. The images he had captured that day would go on to win international awards and be featured in wildlife magazines around the globe. But for David, their true value lay not in the accolades they would bring, but in the reminder they provided of the incredible capacity for heroism and love that existed in the wild places of the world. Years later, whenever David felt discouraged by the darker aspects of human nature that dominated the news, he would return to those photographs of 3 lions risking everything to save a small cub from the coils of a giant python. In those images, he found hope and inspiration, proof that love and courage were not human inventions, but fundamental forces of life itself, expressed in countless ways across the natural world. The story of Moto's rescue became one of David's most requested presentations, and he never tired of sharing it with audiences around the world. Each time he told the tale, he could see the same wonder and amazement in his listeners' eyes that he had felt that day at the watering hole. It was a story that reminded people of the beauty and nobility that existed in nature, and of the profound connections that bound all living creatures together in the grand tapestry of life on Earth.